So even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream.
If our parents and grandparents could toil and struggle for us, if they could raise beams of steel to the sky, send a man to the moon, connect the world with the touch of a button, then surely we can keep on sacrificing and building for our own kids and grandkids, right? And if so many brave men and women could wear our country's uniform and sacrifice their lives for our most fundamental rights, then surely we can do our part as citizens of this great democracy to exercise those rights. Surely we can get to the polls on Election Day and make our voices heard. If farmers and blacksmiths could win independence from an empire, if immigrants could leave behind everything they knew for a better life on our shores, if women could be dragged to jail for seeking the vote, if a generation could defeat a depression and define greatness for all time, if a young preacher could lift us to the mountaintop with his righteous dream, and if proud Americans can be who they are and boldly stand at the altar with who they love, then surely we can give everyone in this country a fair chance at that great American dream.
Rent keeps going up. I have coworkers and neighbors who are moving out because they can't afford the price of rent where they live, and the landlords are giving no justification. I don't think property taxes are going up that much to increase a rent payment to $1,600 a month for basically a 400 square foot hole in the wall. I think that what is being asked nowadays is absolutely outrageous, and it's being driven because there's no control in the city of Jacksonville for rent increases, or there's no anything to control what landlords ask and what the price that they're asking is.
So what's happened to the American dream? When we used to say that, it meant owning a house. What's the American dream now?
Well, if we think the American dream is embodied in a suburban home with a yard and a white picket fence, then I think we're making the American dream much more accessible.
Rent your American dream.
You can rent the American dream.
That is, if you can afford the rent.
Housing is a solution to homelessness, but the reason we don't want to solve the problem is because it requires us to look internally and understand that hundreds of years ago, our country created an entire housing system predicated on the idea that only certain people deserved a home.
Every American is feeling the bite of inflation. Groceries cost more, gas costs more, everything seems to cost more. This past week, the Federal Reserve raised interest rates in an effort to tame the highest inflation in 40 years. The cost of rent is really through the roof. Residential rents across the country went up an average of 15% last year, nearly twice the overall inflation rate. That's particularly painful for tenants because according to Census Bureau data, they now often have to spend as much as half their total income on rent. Why are rents rising so much? Well, it turns out that big Wall Street firms are playing a role. But we found the fundamental problem was years in the making and will take years to fix.
There is so many reasons and excuses being given for why rent is going up. You have the landlord side of it, then you have the government side of it, and basically it boils down to property taxes being raised. So the landlords have to raise the price of rent to cover the property taxes, and and the cost of living, they're saying that is increasing the rent prices. But again, I don't understand that, because 90% of the time, properties that the apartments are being built on, especially some of the older ones, have already been paid for numerous times over. And I'm not sure why they are trying to use those excuses to justify raising rent and basically forcing people out into the streets, or to get 3 and 4 jobs just to support paying rent.
It's been making news for months. Rent is up. Rental prices increasing more than 30% in major cities across the U.S. There's a handful of reasons for the surge, but experts say one in particular is key: private equity firms. Private equity firms raise money from institutional and accredited investors, so not just from any ordinary person. Those funds are then invested in different types of assets with the aim of getting a return on investment.
Real estate experts say Floridians are in a dilemma.
We're currently in the middle of a housing affordability crisis.
Florida Atlantic University real estate economist Ken Johnson says on average, properties in Jacksonville are renting at 15% more than expected over the past 8 years. Johnson says in just the last year, Jacksonville rental rates have appreciated by 22%. According to 8 years of data he says he reviewed on Zillow. Johnson says Florida's rental problem is partly tied to the state's popularity, being one of just 3 states with no state income tax. But the driving factor behind the hike is the demand for housing.
Justin and Brittany, the young Jacksonville couple facing steep rent increases, are starting to lose hope they'll ever be able to buy a home.
No, I think the American dream is owning your own property and having your own dirt that you own. That's specifically why we moved here, was to own a house.
I realized my first house is probably going to be a starter home. It may not be that dream house, but it's a house, it's a home. Now, our dream is now unattainable. It's disturbing.
An affordable housing rally downtown was disrupted earlier today when city workers took props from the rally and you're looking at video from that rally. Activists set up dressers, mattresses, and other furniture to resemble people getting evicted and thrown out on the streets. As the rally is underway, you can see city workers pulling up in trucks and starting to remove the furniture from in front of City Hall.
The pandemic has really opened our eyes in terms of what's going on in this country, and with so many people being put out of work, particularly in the service industry. Families have lost homes, children have had to move in with parents, grandparents have had to take in grandchildren. It's now a real luxury if you're living in your house with just the people that were living in it when pandemic started. And because what's gone on with the economy over the course of the last few years, the prices have gone up. Particularly where we are, it's become a high demand area. People realized how nice it was to live here. And we had all kinds of people come move here, which for some people that's a great thing because they call it progress. For other people it means the prices have gone up and now people who lived here or live here can't afford to anymore. Additionally, if you look at what's going on with the demographic and the service industry as well as the retail industry and just working in the grocery store, the people who we need to keep a city alive, when they can't afford to live here and there's no transportation system, they leave. And you start to form a vicious cycle of the people that we need. You go to Publix and there's nobody that can help you find the milk because it's all out on the racks. And now I'm just using Publix as an example. They do a wonderful job, as do all our grocery stores. But now we've got a new Publix out close by. Where are the people for that new Publix going to come from and how will they get to work? You know yourself that the further you have to go to work, the more important it is for the car that you have that it to be in good service. And in the state of Florida, guess what? If you miss your car insurance payment by 1 day and a taillight is out and they stop you to tell you about the taillight and they run your license, and your car insurance has expired by one day, if you don't have the money to bail yourself out and post your bond, you can go to jail. So what happens while you go to jail, while you're awaiting trial because you didn't have your insurance payment? Then now you've not been able to get to work for 30 days. Now you can't pay your rent. And now you and your family are homeless. So that $300 that could have been the insurance payment, or it could have been the money to bail you out that you might make from a small business, is all the difference that's keeping you from homelessness. And we hear story after story after story where those little amounts of money made a huge difference. Now suppose a family has somebody in it that's working, and that person is able to just meet the bills. But then somebody else living in that same family household has a little small business that makes $200 or $300 a month. All of a sudden they have a safety net. If something breaks, they can get it fixed. If the price goes up, they can pay for it. When gas went up, they're not homeless. But the margins of safety are so small and precarious right now. There have been so many people that we've worked with here in this community who were renting and whose rents went up by $200 and $300 a month because there was such a scarcity of rental property. And the owners, things went up for them. So it's just passed down to the person making the lease to come up with the money to do it. So people are living on the edge of homelessness more than ever before.
Building me a home. I'm building me a home. I'm building me a home. I'm building me a home. My Lord. This earthly house. This earthly house. It's gonna soon decay. It's gonna soon decay.